So this is going to be the walkthrough that I do of all my code for my diorama. I'm going to go over mainly the sky sphere and the lighting because that was the main work that I did with dioramas. But I will also touch up on showing my UI code and these light codes, the ones that are in there and in the water, as well as the rain, how I got the rain working. And I'll see if I can put chapters in the video. So first we're going to be talking about the sky sphere and the light. So if I just open up my blueprints and drag them over. So when you import the sky sphere, you automatically get this. There's not much that I really needed to do to this. That sky effect is something I'll talk about later. That's how I get the rain. Or that's part of how I get the rain. But the main thing is the light. So what I've done is, obviously we've got the light here, and if I press play, give it 2 seconds, there we go. So obviously it rotates, I should really turn that down, but it rotates you know, the light depending on where the slider is, as well as how rotating the sky sphere as well. But I did want to quickly demonstrate something which might have caused me a lot more struggle than I probably should have if I'd done it differently. So what I did, so as an example, so we've got the slider, so there's the slider, and so we'll just represent that, will represent the slider blueprint, the UI blueprint. So what I possibly should have done, and that would have made my life easier, is if we have the light blueprint and the sphere blueprint. So yeah, that. What I probably should have done is affected them separately with a slider. So instead of, you know, so when you do the slider it rotates the sphere, and when you do the slider it also rotates the light. But that isn't what I did, and this probably caused me a lot of trouble. Let me just bump the size on this. So instead I have my sphere dictating my light. Give it my brush. So instead I rotate this, when I do the slider it rotates the sphere, and then the sphere rotates the light instead of the slider rotating both. So this probably caused me a bit more headache than it probably should have. I don't really know which one would have been better to do. So if I should have gone that way or that way. Yeah, so I don't know which one better, but I ended up going with that one. So yeah, I'll quickly run through that. I was just what I wanted to show in my paint. So if I bring up the good sky, the good sky blueprint. So as you can see down here, down in all the variables, we have, where is it? There we go. Time of day for custom mode. So that's the float that I'm using for the entirety of my thing. So, and obviously I can change that, and maybe I can show it here. I just drag this out a little bit. It should just be up here. Yeah, there we go. So obviously that changes, and it goes up to 24 obviously for 24 hours. So that's that was the first thing to get working. So I just needed it to change. I just needed to rotate the sky on a variable, which thankfully it came with one. So then we've got the light, which is obviously in the level, and so the first thing that it does is it casts to the good sky and gets the time of day. So yeah, it gets the time of day that I've set it to. So we now know what the time of day is, and it automatically sets it to that, just to double check. So then, actually I can delete the print string. I'll just save that. So then, this is all about setting the rotation. So obviously I've got two, because I've got the sun and the moon. The sun's brighter and obviously is around and rotates during the day, and the moon is dimmer and it rotates in the night. So what all of these do is well, we'll talk about this bit first. These ones. So obviously we've got the time of day. So say it's 12 or 10, and that gets times by 15. So for the rotation, because obviously the time of day is a 12 variable. It's a 12 float variable, and the rotation is obviously, 360 degrees, so 360 degree variable. So times it by 15, so we get the rotation should be. So if it was 10 o'clock, or so we'll say 10 o'clock, so that'll be 150. So it needs to rotate to 150 degrees. But as I mentioned, the two didn't slightly match up. So if they were both at 0, then they didn't match up. The good sky was still during day, but I think my light was rotated some, and was showing an afternoon or something. So what I've done is I just manually add an extra 100 degrees to the light, and that just fixes everything. So that gets plugged into the sun, so that sets the world's sun rotation. Because there is, if you see here, there's moon and sun. And then for the moon, obviously it needs to be the other side of the sun, so it just gets flipped 180 degrees. So they're constantly completely opposite each other, as they should be. And then for these down here, if I just bring these closer, oops, changed my mouse DPI by accident. So this is setting the intensity, because the problem that I slightly ran into is I was trying to have both the sun and the moon be present, like the lights be on technically, at the same time, and that doesn't really work. So what these do is it just sets the float range. So it just sets the intensity of the sun or the moon when I need it. So let's have a look. So for the sun, if it's between 170 and 360 degrees, then it sets the sun to 5, so that's a 5 intensity. That just lights everything up in the scene. And then if it's not, then it sets it back to 0. And then the same for the moon. So if its minimum is 360 and its maximum is 550, then that sets the moon intensity to 0.75, because it's a lot dimmer, because the moon gives off nowhere near as much light as the sun. So that's a lot dimmer, and then obviously if it's not between those, then it sets it back to 0. So that's those. So that is the entire sun, that's the entire light system. So that's what we see whenever we play, and then we mess with the slider. So I'll quickly go into the slider UI now. So we'll move on to the slider, Diorama, UI, widget, there we go, time slider. So this is obviously the blueprint for the UI. So that's what this bit does here. Is obviously it gets so in the for this slider, you can put a maximum value. So it is originally between 0 and 1. So then if it's in the middle, it would be 0.5. But what you can do is you can change its max value. So I put it to 24 for 24 hours. But thankfully, what that does, which, I mean, is what I designed it to do, is that it matches perfectly with the time of day float in the good sky, because that obviously goes 0 to 24. So I can just take that value in the slider and just plug it straight into the time of day. Obviously casting to it and all of that stuff. And then to change the the slider thing, so obviously that's currently a moon. I mean, it changes to the sun, but it would be moon whenever it's in the grey area, and then it would be a sun. Shows as a sun whenever it's in the light area. Actually, I can show that now. I'll press play. So obviously it's the sun when it's in the light area, and then when it goes to the night time thing, transitions over to the moon. So that's what that does. And that is done pretty simply. So obviously it checks whether the time is between a certain time. So obviously 6 o'clock and 17, which is technically 5 o'clock in the evening or whatever. So if it is, then it sets the where is it? Oh no, yeah. So that's what these are. Then it sets these as a moon. Wait. No, yes. Sorry, I've got them crossed over. If it is between that, that's what day is, because obviously it's that middle section that shows the day. It goes around down here and sets the slider to sun. So that's just the sun PNG. And I needed to, for the bar image, I needed to keep the slider border, which is the same as this one. Like, it never actually changes, or rather it changes with itself constantly, so it never looks like it changes, but I just needed this. Otherwise, as soon as it changed, if I didn't have this, as soon as it changed from the moon to the sun, it would also get rid of the slider border. So obviously that just sets a slider, and then if it isn't between these numbers, these times, then it sets it to the moon. And that's just pretty simple. Right, what else was there? The lights. So again, lights are fairly simple. So they're in their own blueprints. Because I only realised in this project that you can actually make blueprints out of pretty much everything. So if I do that, I can make a blueprint class out of light. So if I do light, you know, I can make a skylight blueprint or whatever. It doesn't need to be an actor. Like, I've always just used actor, porno, character. Those are usually the ones that I use. But you can actually make it out of a blueprint out of pretty much everything. So these lights, again, fairly simple. Gets the time of day, and if it is between the time, then it sets the light intensity to a certain amount. And this is what I meant when I was talking about how I tried to make a nicer transition, in the fact that, so if it's between, 8 and 16, then it sets the intensity to 0, so obviously that's there, but they'll be off. If it's between 16 and 18, then it sets it to 10,000. If it's between these ones, then it sets it to 20,000. And if it's not between any of these, then it sets it to 30,000. So it's basically a bunch of if statements. These branches are just stand in for normal coding if statements. So if it's this, yes. If it's not, then it moves on to the next one. Is it? Yes. Then set it. If it's not move over to this one, is it? Yes, set it. If it's not move over, yes, set, or no, move, yes, set, no. Then it just finally sets it over here. So it's just basically just a line of if statements, and then obviously the bottom one's an if else statement. So yeah, that's what these are. So fairly simple, not really anything to write home about. And finally was the rain. So I've got a where was it? Can you see it? Where's my rain? Rain. There we go. Oh, it's set to invisible right now. But that's what this does. So if I visibility it, I'm zooming out. And that's just what this rain is. Obviously there's the thing there. So the rain, I ended up having to follow a tutorial for. See if I can find it. There it is. Because I mean I don't really know anything about Niagara, so I ended up having to follow a tutorial. I found a really good one, and I just kept following it when it wants to load. So there's a couple of different ones. So there's two main parts to this rain. There's obviously the rain streaks itself. If I just pause it because it's not wanting to play ball. There we go. So yeah, you've got the rain streaks, and then if I can show it, there's also, if the rain hits an object, I'm trying to find the best place to show this. It'll just be here. Basically, if the rain hits an object, it makes like a small splash. It kills that particle, and it makes a small splash, which is what these hanging particles are. Say it makes a splash, it does like little dots. So the rain itself is it's just a simple dot particle set to white. Got a big spawn rate, all of that stuff. But what it does is it adds a velocity, so it spawns them right at the top, and it adds a velocity so they fall down quickly, but it also has a slightly horizontal velocity as well, just a slight one, so that the rain falls down at diagonal, because obviously rain very rarely ever falls just straight down. So then it adds the velocity so it moves down, and then what it does, which I found very nice and very useful, is, if I can find it, is what it does is it stretches the particle based on its velocity. It has a gravity. Don't fully remember where this is, but yeah, it stretches the particle based on its velocity, and then it also angles the particle based on its velocity. Because if it didn't, then there'd be lines, very thin lines like that one there, like that line there. That's just a single rain particle. But they'd be rotated all over the place. They'd be falling down horizontally or vertically, or things like that. So what it does, it just angles them to their velocity, so they look like they're falling straight down and they're streaking down. And then once it generates a collision event, and once the on hit of anything, and once the rain hits an object, kills the particle, and then activates a hanging particle at that area. So it initializes the particles, and it's just, there's not much to this one. It's just a very small dot of particle, just where the single rain particle was killed, and then it just spawns one for a few seconds, and then kills it. Just to show off like a little splash effect sort of thing. So that's what that is. Yes, and to get it working, this was complicated, and to be completely honest, I probably shouldn't admit this, but I don't fully remember how I got it no, I remember how I got it working, but it feels like it shouldn't be working, because, or rather, the particle itself wasn't hard to get working, as I could just, where is it? I think it's in the level blueprint. Yes. Is it? Yeah, there's actually probably a lot of stuff I should talk about here. So there's the fireflies. Okay, there's the rain. So event tick. Yes, okay, so event tick, it casts to the slider, because obviously in my widget I've got a, if I show you, I've got a little tick box for the slider, for the rain, and obviously I want the rain to turn on once that is ticked and turn off once it's not ticked. So it's done that here, so it's just this bit here, so obviously it gets to the slider, gets the rain boolean, which is just what that thing is. It's just what that tick box is. And if it is ticked, then it generates a custom event called rain on. And then if it isn't, then it deactivates this custom event. And the custom event is just very simple. It's just this. So as soon as the rain is turned on, then it sets the visibility. Yeah, it just activates the particle and sets the visibility to turn on. That's the same as the fireflies. I haven't really talked about the fireflies, but they're just these hanging dots that turn on whenever it's night. And again, that's done here, but instead of getting the widget, again the tick box gets a good sky time of day. If it is if it is day, then it sets the visibility, so these ones sets the visibility to 0, and if it isn't, then it sets the visibility to on. But back to the rain. So there are two main parts that I wanted to the rain. It should still be working. If I turn it on, yeah, you can see there's lightning flashing through the sky. So what that is there is a sky preset. If we look at the good sky sphere, there's a sky preset called what was it? No, sky effect called storm, and that's what that is. So obviously I wanted that to activate as well, and this was the bit that didn't seem to want to work. Well, I couldn't get it working. It was very weird. I couldn't get it working. I spent like a full day on it trying to get it to work. Couldn't get it working, and so I went back, obviously, and I came in the next day to opened it all up, and then it was just working just randomly. So don't fully know why it wasn't working, and then decided to work, but I will take it, and I'll show you how it's done. So do I have storm? That's just for begin play. So about here. See, I set a sky effect. Let's see if I can find. Oh yeah, no, yeah, it's right here. So so this bit, it's just event tick. So every single tick, it's getting the sky effect, that enum. So you know, the multiple options that I showed you that storm is part of. So every tick it gets that, and then sets it just sets it just so I could, whenever I change it, it will just instantly change. Whenever I change it in a blueprint, so it will instantly change in the diorama. So that here is over here. So again, gets that and then sets the sky effect. So yeah, I do it multiple times because honestly, I don't really know how it's working. I've got it to work, and there's probably a couple of things that aren't necessary. So maybe like this isn't actually necessary, but it's working, and I'm too scared to unplug anything in case it breaks it all again. So I want to see if I can find where it sets the storm. Because it gets it and then sets it, but I can't remember where I set this. Can I find this? No, that's not it. rain. Like I said, I don't fully remember where everything is. Maybe it is actually in the good sky somewhere else. No. I don't dare touch any of this stuff either. Trying to remember, because I'm pretty sure it's only just the rain doesn't have a blueprint. Maybe it's in the slider. Yes, it is. Yes, nope, I remember. It is. So it obviously it gets the for this bit here is it gets the whether the checkbox is yes or no. And if it is, then that's where it sets the storm sky effect. And if it isn't, then it just sets it to the sun stars, the default custom mode time of day one. So it took me a little while to find it. But yeah, that's the entire thing. So there's that bit. There is this bit here, and there's also this bit here. Not sure if I needed all of it to get it to work, or if there's a much easier way of getting it to work. But this was the effort of multiple hours, and I'm too scared to change it, to be honest. So yeah, that is pretty much my entire walkthrough of my diorama. That's all the coding really done. I guess I could talk about the sea monster. If I can just click on him. It's very easy for moving him. Actually, oh, I didn't need these. That's going to be deleted. Just save that. So what these do, obviously this is all about moving him, because when I want it to be, if I press play, when it's night, he moves out, and when it's day, he moves back in. That's it. That's all it is to him. And that's all done here. So obviously it gets time of day as usual. If it is day, then this bit is as well as multiple, because it moves the monster to this area, and it also moves the light to this area. The separate light that I made that I placed underwater, it moves that to the outward the outward position, and it also sets the intensity to what it needs to be. And then if it isn't, then it moves it back in, moves the sea monster back into its little cave. It moves the light back into the little cave, and also sets the intensity of the light to 0, because obviously he's meant to be asleep, so he wouldn't be giving off any light. So yeah, that is pretty much the entirety of the coding. In fact, I'm pretty sure that is the entirety of my coding for this place, for this diorama project. So yeah, hopefully this has given me some insight, helped explain and visualize what my presentation, what my document was explaining. But yes, thanks for watching.